Thank you for coming out tonight and braving the rain. My name is Jen, and I'm the events manager here at Word. And we know you have a lot of choices as to where you spend your time and your money, so we really appreciate when you choose us. I'm really excited about tonight's author. I've been a fan for many years, and one of the highest praise I think I can give to his books is that when you're done reading them, you become an advocate not only for the books, but for the political issues that he is working on. And I can't tell you how many customers and teenagers I've given these books to, and then they come back in and they're like, oh my God, did you know about this? And we stumble down that, sort of chain of issues that gets to, what you're using in your daily life and how you interact with technology. But he needs very little introduction, so I'm going to keep it short. But before we bring him up, we ran a little contest because in Pirate Cinema, which is the new book we're celebrating tonight, the main character is sort of a mashup video master, and we invited people to make their own mashups and send them in, and the staff picked the final 5, and then Cory picked the winner. But we have an honorable mention, a runner-up, and then the winner, and we're going to show you all of them tonight. So hopefully nothing has timed out here. What's that?
They're short.
They're short. They are less than 3 minutes long, so do not worry. It will not be a several-hour production. So here we go. This is our honorable mention. And if you made it, you should wave your hand and be recognized. I think some folks are here.
Fury says to me once, in the time of gods and monsters, what is the worth of a man?
Everything is achievable through technology. Better living, robust health, and for the first time in human history,
more power than you can imagine. The question is, will you control that power?
Last year, Earth had a visitor from another planet who had a grudge match that leveled a small town. We learned that not only are we not alone, but we are hopelessly, hilariously outgunned.
The humans have played their hand. Now we get ready to play ours.
The world's filling up with people who can't be matched. They can't be controlled.
They are among us. We must know what they can do.
We're a chemical mixture that makes chaos. We're a time bomb.
You are made to be ruled. In the end, you will always kneel.
That's enough now, bro!
sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Now you've seen how bad things can get. Well, they can get a whole lot worse.
As of right now, we are at war.
We will strike with a fury this world has never witnessed.
Putting together a team.
You have become a problem I have to deal with.
Trying to get me back in the world?
Trying to save it.
Stop lying to me!
We're at war, and he thinks about superheroes.
These people may be isolated, unbalanced even, but I believe with the right push, it can be exactly what we need. Do we want to drop another mouse in the snake pit? Or do we want to send our own snake?
You are all of you beneath me.
You filed several reports criticizing Director Fury's actions as reckless.
What, Mother?
He's the spy. His secrets have secrets.
What is phase 2? When you absolutely, positively got to kill every motherfucker in the room, except no substitutes.
Nick Fury saw something running under the system, the truth about what we can do.
Yeah, you say peace. I kind of think you mean the other thing. Where's my super suit?
All right, and now our winner.
Lately I've been listening to a lot of Jay-Z. If you're having bank problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems. Admits not one. I got protesters saying our economy blows. And my Wall Street brothers occupying close. You bitches keep saying no change, no votes. I work for the bank. Stupid. What type of threats? There's those the gas pumps where your whole paycheck goes. It's been a long time since you was having cash flow. So fuck my critics. You can kiss my gas hole. If you don't like my lyrics, then you can hit the road. Who cares about the polls in this election? A show. If you want to vote for me, I don't give a shit. So, news mags try to use my weak ass to advertisers. Give them more cash for ads. Fuckers, I don't know what you take me as, but understand the intelligence Obama has. Your fucking riches, ranks, bitches. I'm dumb. I got 99 problems. Admits not one. 99 problems. I admit one. With all your bank problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems. Bitch, not one. The year is 2009, and the White House is mine, but the economy is in full motherfucking decline. My choice at the time was to shit on the poor or on the banks to get elected once more. Now, I'm not trying to fight. JP Morgan Chase got their campaign dollars so I can win the race. So I suck their dick and watch the country implode. First, son, do you know how to cheat the tax code? Well, I'm young and I'm rich, and my tax rate's low. I look like a 1%er. You would know that I tax your test portion. I get some. No, just tell us when you sent down to Mexico. If you think I'm stepping down from office for trafficking weapons in their drug cartel, or I ain't stepping down from shit because this president's legit. Well, do you mind if we see that birth certificate? All my records are blocked. You conspiracy, and I know my rights. So you don't need a warrant for that. Well, now, aren't you sharp as a tack? Are you some type of lawyer or something? Well, I'm not a lawyer for nothing. I passed the bar, so I know quite a bit. Enough that you don't stand a fucking chance. Well, let's see how smart you are when the election comes. I got 99 problems. This bitch ain't one. 99 problems. I ain't one. With all your bank problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems. Bitch, not one. Criminal, fraud, repression, deceit, I murder, and I plunder the world elite. We invade countries, so we have all they own. I have a dream. Well, I have a goal. I'm Barack Obama.
Do we have the maker in the house? They didn't make it. Well, so I will have to send them their care package. They won a pretty much complete set of Cory's YA novels, which
including the forthcoming one, the sequel to Little Brother.
Homeland, which you are all excited about. Take it from me.
Not to mention Pirate Cinema in paperback.
Well, no,
Galley, technically.
Yeah. There we go. So, Jolie, do you need me behind this mic or anywhere? Do I need to be close to them? All right. So, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for watching these remix videos, and thank you for Word for putting together that contest and doing the prejudging and my publisher Tor, and so on. Thank you. I'm here to talk to you tonight about my new novel, Pirate Cinema. And the way that I do this is I talk for a few minutes about the book, and then I give you a brief reading, and then we can answer questions. So the book is called Pirate Cinema, and it was inspired by a kind of legislative nightmare in the country where I live, England. I'm from the United Kingdom, or I live in the United Kingdom rather. I'm not from there, I'm from Canada. I now have British citizenship. I'm technically British, but I have not been issued an accent. So when I speak to you tonight, and when I do the reading, I won't be doing any of the British accents. I will, however, later do the German accent, because I do a funny German accent. So Pirate Cinema was inspired by a kind of, as I said, a legislative nightmare that followed on the heels of a pretty interesting study. In the United Kingdom, we have one of the coolest government jobs I've ever heard of. There's a woman named Martha Lane Fox, whose title is the Champion for Digital Inclusion, and her job is to help steer government policies so that everybody in the country has access to the internet and all the benefits that it delivers. One of the things she did when she took office was she said, let's find out what benefits the internet delivers, right? Let's figure out what it is I'm fighting for. What do you get if I win, right? So she had a ready-made lab for studying this, because in the post-industrial northern towns of the United Kingdom, towns that are kind of analogous to, say, Detroit or Cincinnati, places where there were once centers of heavy industry, where most of that industry has collapsed or moved offshore, there's very high unemployment, very high levels of poverty, very high levels of deprivation, very vulnerable populations, and a lot of people living in what you would call a housing project here. We call them council blocks or council estates. Council estate's a big wide one. Council blocks an apartment building. And in one of these council blocks, they'd had a pilot program to give people internet access. And it had been running for a few years. And Martha Lane Fox's insight was that if you studied the difference between the families that lived in the internet blocks and compared them to the people living in the buildings next door, that whatever the difference was, you could attribute to the internet, because they came from very similar circumstances. They were living in the same kind of houses. They hadn't done anything to get the internet. It's not like they'd opted into an internet experiment. And she thought, whatever the difference is, comes out of the internet. So she went and studied it, and I think she hired PricewaterhouseCoopers to do it. And I think they thought going in, we'll probably see their kids got better grades. That probably won't happen. And it's true, their kids did get better grades. They were more likely to go into post-secondary education. They were more socially mobile. But also the parents had better jobs, right? Because imagine like two moms going out looking for work, and one of them is going to walk down the street looking for help wanted signs. The other one's got Craigslist and email resumes, right? Who's going to get the better work? And if you've got better jobs, you've got more money. If you've got more money, you've got better outcomes in lots of places, including markedly better nutrition. And not only do they have better nutrition, they have better health overall, because if you're sick, or if you have a chronic condition, or if you're injured, you have access to all the people online who share your condition. You can talk to them about what works and what doesn't. You can look up more about your condition. If your doctor's prescribed some medication, you can compare it to the other medication you're taking, see if there are any conflicts, maybe save your life. So that outcome improved for them too. And also, they were more civically engaged, more politically aware. They had, through this one wire, received free speech, a free press, free assembly, access to education, to post-secondary education and social mobility, employment-ready cash, nutrition, health, civic and political engagement. It's a pretty amazing thing. And at the same time, legislative debacle, because our conservative government, our Labour government rather, introduced a bill called the Digital Economy Bill. And the Digital Economy Bill was a copyright bill that contained something called the 3 strikes rule. And the 3 strikes rules have been introduced in other places around the world. And what they say is if you're accused of 3 acts of copyright infringement, or if someone points their finger at you and says you violated copyright law, something esoteric, many of us will not know if we're on the right side or wrong side of copyright law. After 3 accusations, your internet service provider is obliged to terminate your internet access. And it's not like a criminal conviction. You don't necessarily get to see your accuser or the evidence against you or rebut it or have the full range of due process and a public defender. You just get this cut off as though you were being a naughty child who'd abused your TV privileges and your mom and dad are taking away the TV for a year, except this isn't a TV. This is all the stuff you get from the internet. And I was very worried about this because, as I say, in other countries, they'd already passed these bills. In France and in New Zealand, they passed it. In New Zealand, it was particularly dirty because in New Zealand, after the bill was passed, Bill 92A, their copyright bill, there was so much popular outcry that they actually had to strike the bill off the books. Parliament sat again, and removed the bill from their law books. But then they had the Christchurch earthquake, right? The worst natural disaster in living New Zealand memory. One of the great cities lay in ruins, people under the rubble, total devastation, a disaster for them on the scale of Katrina. And they had a special sitting of Parliament to clear emergency relief, money, resources, first responders to go there and help rebuild the city, rescue the people who were still alive, help prevent a secondary humanitarian disaster from bad sanitation and so on. And as Parliament was sitting down for that, they lobbyists from the entertainment industry had a lawmaker at a rider reinstating their 3 strikes rule, and let it be known that if this doesn't pass as their rider, that they would hold up the whole legislation.
Poison pill.
Yeah, a poison. Well, opposite of a poison. Yeah, kind of a poison pill. That's right. So I thought, this is very aggressive. You might even say like depraved in its indifference lobbying. And it's going to come here to the UK. There's nothing special about the UK. But of course, when you say that to people inside the Westminster Village, which is our equivalent of the Beltway, the people, lawmakers and staffers and lobbyists and think tankies and, the people kind of who know how this stuff works, they pat you on the head and they say, it's okay, we're English.
It's okay, we're English.
That's right. Yeah. It's okay, we're English. We won't let anything bad happen. We'll have hearings, we'll hold consultations, we'll hear from experts. By the time this is ready to become law, all the very bad things will have been removed. You don't need to worry. Run along now. Off you trot. And we organized phone calls, we rallied people, but as the election loomed, it seemed really clear that they weren't going to have any time for hearings on it. Without hearings, without consultations, we thought there's no way, there's no substantial debate on this, they can't possibly pass it. Now, the election was called, and just before the members of Parliament go back to their home districts to start campaigning for re-election, there's one final sitting of Parliament called the wash-up. And it's like if you've ever rented a summer cottage, before you go home, you wash up the dishes. They wash up little bits of legislation that are lying around that need to be passed before Parliament prorogues, suspends its operations, and everybody goes back and starts stumping for re-election. It's generally a skeleton crew of MPs, just the minimum necessary for quorum to have a legitimate vote. Most of them are already back campaigning because, of course, if you lose the vote, you're out of a job, right? So they're all back trying to save their jobs. It's a skeleton crew there, and by tradition, any legislation introduced at the wash-up has to be non-controversial, already fully debated, nothing too technical, station-keeping laws that keep the lights on, keep the civil service paid, nothing controversial. So, of course, they put 3 strikes into the wash-up. They not only put 3 strikes into the wash-up, but it was on what's called a 3-line whip. So the whips are kind of like, if you watch hockey, they're like the hockey enforcers of Parliament. Each party has its own whip, and the whips go around to all the parliamentarians, and they tell them how the party expects them to vote. They hand them a piece of paper with their vote. And if it's not underlined, they get to vote their conscience. Whatever you think benefits the people who sent you to office, you get to vote for. 1 underline, the party wants you to vote this way. 3 underlines, if you don't vote this way, you're out of the party. Right? So 3-line whip is vote the way the party tells you, or you're out of the party. Now, if you're out of the party on the day they start the election campaign, you're not getting reelected, right? You don't have an office, you don't have a machine, you don't have a budget. That's it. So this barely quorum Parliament, the skeleton crew, brought in the 3 strikes rule. And on that, within months of Parliament being informed by its own expert that the internet delivers all of these benefits, we passed a rule that said, if you live in the same house as someone who is accused of watching TV the wrong way, we'll confiscate your access to the digital world. You'll get a summary digital death penalty. In case you feel like that's something that you don't have to worry about here, last year, the big entertainment companies here met with the big ISPs, AT&T, Time Warner, Comcast, and so on, and brokered a 6-strike voluntary deal. So if you are accused of 6 acts of infringement here, your internet access will be terminated after a series of graduated steps, each one confiscating more of your internet access. AT&T's internal memo describing this to their customer service reps was published yesterday on Torrent Freak, a website, that described what their process would be. And their process is that after your 2nd strike, they shut down your ability to access YouTube and Facebook and slow down your connection overall. And the way that you can get that reinstated is there's a kind of re-education camp for copyright that's run by the record industry. You have to attend a full suite of re-education sessions from the record industry and then successfully complete a test that shows that you fully have absorbed and agree with the record industry's view of how copyright works. Otherwise, your access to the internet will continue to be degraded on the basis of more unsubstantiated accusations. So that's the rule here. So I wrote this book, Pirate Cinema. Pirate Cinema is a novel about a kid who lives in one of these northern towns, a town called Bradford. And once the center of the wool industry. There's an old poem by, I think, Keats that says, that uses the simile, he looked, as rich as the silk on a Bradford millionaire's top hat. But now Bradford is in total decline. It's in really rough shape. And this kid, his name is Trent, but he calls himself Cecil B. DeVille, after Cecil B. DeMille. He makes his own movies, the kind of movies we just saw. He's very good at it. People love what he does. He's excited by it. Excited kids make mistakes. He gets sloppy. He uses the internet to download the video he needs to make his new movies without using a proxy. Sometimes his family gets disconnected from the internet and they lose everything. His dad, who's a telecommuter, who works in a virtual phone bank, that's like a phone bank except they don't have to pay for desks or phones or chairs or snack food or toilets. Everybody works from home. You got a headset, you got a laptop, you got Skype. You log in and it says, today you're taking pizza orders, so you start taking pizza orders and entering them into your little computer interface. Tomorrow you might be booking in warranty service for washing machines. No Skype, no internet, no job. His dad's out of a job. His mom has a disability. She can't walk very well. So there's two ways she can receive her disability benefits. She can either walk to the welfare office and sign on, which she can't do, she's got leg problems, or she can sign on the internet. No internet, no benefits. His little sister is a very good scholar. She's the family's hope for sort of the first person to go into post-secondary education. No internet, no homework, no post-secondary education. So having ruined his family, he does what the hero of many Dickensian novels have done. He runs away to London and he falls in with a kind of strange group of ragtag heroes. He falls in with a group of kind of anarchist freegan squatter movie makers who call themselves the Jammy Dodgers, kind of as semi-seriously, ha-ha only serious. And they make their own movies and they show them in pirate cinemas, underground movie theaters. Underground in the sense that they're not widely publicized, like you have to know the secret knock to get in, like an old style rave, but also underground in the sense that they're like breaking into old vaulted Victorian brick sewers and turning them into movie theaters. Or Highgate Cemetery in North London, screening movies on the sides of the mausoleums. Or they're showing them in the squatted pubs and warehouses that they live in. It becomes a citywide and then a nationwide phenomenon as other people start making their own movies and holding their own pirate cinemas. And they think, you know what? To hell with the law, right? I mean, we don't need the law. We can operate outside the law. Who cares how stupid the law gets? Our superior technology makes your inferior laws irrelevant. But as many people have discovered, just because you're not interested in the law does not mean the law isn't interested in you. And the laws get worse, including a law that says if you download, you go to jail. Now, that's not really science fiction, because 2 weeks ago, Japan passed a law that says if you download infringing material, you go to jail for up to 2 years. Click the wrong link on YouTube, go to jail for 2 years. It complements their law that says if you upload infringing material, you go to jail for 10 years, that they passed back in June. So they decide enough is enough. They decide that they need to stop these laws from occurring in the first place, and the only way to do that is to starve the beast. They have to take the money away from the entertainment industry that they use to compromise the laws and the integrity of their country, to remove people's civil liberties. So they only have one weapon at their disposal, only one thing that they're ever really good at, and that's piracy. So they decide to use piracy to do it. And that's the scene I'm going to read to you. To hear this excerpt from chapter 4, you need to know a few things. Trent has found a girlfriend. Her name is 26. They live in a squatted pub called the Zero Day. And they have figured out a way to keep their faces off CCTV. They stick high-intensity miniature infrared LEDs in the brims of their hats that turns their heads into big glowing balls when CCTVs try to take pictures of them. And apart from that, you just need to know that I'm only going to do the German and not the British accents as mentioned before. What's worse than making a great comic into a crap film? Making a great comic into 18 crap films, which is exactly what they did to Milady de Winter, which sold zillions of books in Japan before being translated into 45 languages, and including English, sweeping the globe with its modern retelling of The Three Musketeers. So naturally, it became one of the most anticipated films of the century by kids all over the planet. They signed the best-grossing adult actors in Hollywood to play the villains, and imported 2 Bollywood actors, Preeta Kapoor and Rajiv Kumar, to play the beautiful visiting princess and the evil king of thieves. The producer, who mostly made films where computer-generated spaceships fought deadly duels over poorly articulated political differences, explained in an interview that these actors would open up the billion-strong Indian film-going market, and he made it clear that his $400 million movie was more investment vehicle than art. They got the cutest child actors, though, the finest special effects wizards, the best toy and video game tie-ins, and advertisements that were slathered over every stationary surface and public vehicle in places as distant and unlikely as Bradford. And Milady de Winter was a success. Opening weekend box office smashed all records with a $225 million tally, and all told that first movie alone was reckoned as $1 billion profit to Paramount Studios and its investors. There's only one problem. It was utter crap. I saw it when I was only 12, and even though I was barely a fan of the comics, even I was offended on behalf of every halfway intelligent kid in the world. Every actor in the film was brilliant, but the words they were asked to speak were not. It was as though the film had been written by someone wearing boxing gloves. Whenever the dialogue got too horrible to bear, the director threw in another high-speed and pointless action sequence, each stupider and wankier than the last. Until by the end of the film, it climaxed with a scene in which sword fighters leapt hundreds of feet into the air, tossed their swords into enemy soldiers as they fell, skewered several of them at once like a kebab, did an acrobatic mid-air somersault, snatched the sword free of the evil bad guys, and then whirled it over their head like helicopter rotors as they came in for soft landings. The critics hated it. The reviews were so uniformly negative that the film posters were reduced to a single word like action, the New York Times. Fast, the Guardian. Adventure, the Globe and Mail. So what happened to this miserable, festering gush of cinematic puke? It was only the most profitable film in history. So profitable that they were already shooting the sequel by opening weekend. Everybody I knew saw them, even me, and no one I knew liked them, but we went anyway. And there was so much marketing tie-in, it was impossible to avoid. School gave out Milady de Winter cups with orange squash on Fun Run Day. Sad men in the streets holding signs handed out Milady de Winter coupons for free chips at Yankee Fried Chicken and Fish, a place where they didn't even let school kids in. The animated hoardings during the World Cup played the stupidest scenes in endless loops. The standard joke was that Milady de Winter films were just barely tolerable if you downloaded an Italian dub version and pretended that you were looking at opera. I tried it. It didn't make the experience any better. And still we kept going to see the sequels, and still they kept making them 2 and sometimes 3 per year. Now I'm going to skip ahead to a scene where they visit their friend Aziz, who's a kind of high-grade, high-tech dumpster diver, who's kind of the armorer of their little band, their Q. And they've gone to visit him in his warehouse. As we wound our way through Aziz's shelves, he pointed out his most recent finds and stubbed his toe on a carton the size of a shoebox that rattled. He cussed fluently at it, then gave it a shove toward an overflowing shelf. "What's that anyway?" I said. "Thumb drives," he said. 1,000 of them all told. He gestured at more small cartons. I boggled. Sure, I had a dozen thumb drives back at the 0 day, ones we'd found at the charity shop and stuff. They were useful for carrying files you didn't want to load onto your mobile, or for loading onto older machines that didn't have working wireless links. Like most people I know, I treated thumb drives as semi-disposable and never thought of them as very valuable. But 1,000 of them, that was getting to serious money. "Bugger," I said. "You gonna sell them?" He snorted. "Nah, these aren't the kind you sell. They're ancient, only 32 gigabytes each. I only keep them here because I'm convinced that someone will find something better to do with them than dumping them in a landfill." "I might just take you up on that," I said, and my mind began to whirl. I don't think I'd ever seen a 32 gig stick before then. The ones we got at first year at school were 128s, and they were obsolete and nearly filled with crap adverts for junk food in Disneyland Paris. These ones were shaped like little footballs and emblazoned with the logo for something called Major League Soccer. 32 gigs was such a ludicrously small size compared to the terabyte versions for sale in the little dry cleaner, newsagent, phone unlocking place by Old Street Station. It'd take 30 of the little footballs to equal just one of those. What the hell could you put on one? "You're joking," said Rabbit Dog, as I thought aloud about this in the pub room in the 0 day, one dark September night, as the wind howled and the rain lashed the shutters over the windows. He got a lot less shy lately. 32 gigs is tons of space. You could stick 50 640 by 480 videos on one of those. Yeah, and I could get 1,000,000 films on there if I was willing to knock them down to 10 pixels by 10 pixels. You could pretend you were watching a film on a screen 5 miles away. Who cares about 640 by 480? "Fine," he said. "But what about 1 or 2 films?" There it was, staring me in the face. If you wanted to distribute just One film at very high resolution with 4 or 5 audio tracks and some supplementary material. 32 gigs is plenty. They'd rattle around with all the space left over. And that's when the plan came together. Aziz not only had 1,000 thumb drives, he also had a shelf full of bulk writers for them. Ones that could write 50 at a time, and ones that could take 50 at a time and let you write 50 disk images to them all at once. We packaged up an early leaked copy of Part 18 of Milady de Winter, along with a couple hundred of the best piss takes we found online, and a little video that we all worked on, piecing it together using dialogue from the film and its earlier parts, cutting in one word at a time to have the actors explain. When you go to see terrible shows like this one, you just give money to the people who are destroying our country with corrupt, evil laws. Your children are being sent to jail by laws bought with the money from your purchase. Don't give them your gold. If you must see this stupid film, do it at home and keep your money for better things. Make your own art. Originality is just combining things that no one ever thought to combine before. Some of the word choices were a bit odd. All 18 parts combined had the vocabulary of a reader for a toddler, but it worked brilliantly. Some of 26's anarchist friends were deep professionals at making t-shirts. They lent us their silk screening kit and showed me how to make a little grid of skull crossbones logos with "Play Me" written beneath. We lined up the loaded thumbs on the pub floor in a grid that matched the skulls on the screen and sprayed sloppy red and black identifiers on the footballs, straight over those naff old Major League Soccer marks. Finally, we used one of Aziz's specialist printers to run off thousands of feet of scarlet nylon ribbon printed with the same manifesto we put on the thumbs, and we signed it the Jammy Dodgers. We threaded lengths of ribbon through all of the footballs and tied them off, and we filled a urethane shopping bag with our test run and admired our handiwork. "Now," said Chester, "how do you plan on getting them to people before they see the film? You gonna hand them out at a tube or something?" I shook my head and swilled some of the mulled wine that we'd made to warm up the night, spat a clove back into my cup. Nah, too inefficient. We want to get these to people who are actually planning on seeing the film right before they stump up their money. Maximum impact. That was the idea. Maximum impact. A film makes most of its gross on that all-important opening weekend. Attack the box office from that weekend and you attack the studio at its weakest, most vulnerable point. "I'm going to get them out in Leicester Square," I said, "on opening night." It was a rush to get it all done in time for the big night. We worked around the clock, silk screening, wiring, writing disk images, planning routes. I saw Aziz's thumb drives exactly 10 days before opening night. I had the idea the next day, and that left us with 9 days to prep. By day 8, it was clear we wouldn't make it. I reckoned that to give out 1,000 thumb drives, we'd need at least 15 people on the distribution side, which meant wiring up 15 CCTV killing hats. And the hats were turning out to be a right beast. Aziz had shown me how to do it, but soldering the flexible wire was harder than it looked, and I ruined 2 hats completely before I did even one. 26 promised me that she would be able to dig up 10 more helpers through her connections. They had to be absolutely trustworthy, with nerves of steel. She knew which helpers had been best when we'd been getting the word out on the theft of intellectual property bill, and which of those people had been the nerviest when it came to planning and executing secret screening parties. We agreed that we'd bring them in at the last minute to minimize the chance that one of them would blab our plan. But with 48 hours to go, I was a wreck. We only had 3 hats done, half the drives hadn't been flashed, and I hadn't slept for more than a few hours and days. I drank so much coffee that my eyes wouldn't focus and my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't hold the soldering iron. Rabid Dog was trying to take over for me, but he didn't have a clue how to do it. "No, not like that," I said, as he burned the hat with a hot iron, filling the table with the stink of burnt plastic. "Hell, man, you've ruined it, you idiot!" 26 crossed the room in 3 quick steps and grabbed my flailing arms and pinned them to my sides. "Enough! That is quite enough of that! You are going to bed!" I started to object, and she shook her head furiously, her Mohican's ponytail flopping from side to side. "I don't want to hear it. You're going to make a complete balls up of this adventure if you don't get some sleep. Get us all arrested if I don't kill you first. Now apologize to Dog." She was right. I hung my head. "Sorry, Dog. I was out of order." He muttered something. I felt miserable. Dog was better about talking those days, sure, but if you were cruel to him, he went right back inside his own skull and shut the door behind him. Jem glared at me. It seemed they were all furious with me. I recognized the paranoid, angry feeling for what it was: massive sleep deprivation and caffeine withdrawal and caffeine overdose. Time to go to bed. I woke 14 hours later, feeling like weights had been tied to my arms and legs by a merry prankster who finished the job by gluing my eyes shut with wheat paste and then taking a foul, runny shit in my mouth. Yes, I know that this is a gratuitously disgusting way of describing it. Take comfort, dear reader, in the knowledge that it was not one half so disgusting as the taste in my mouth. I changed into a brown corduroy bathrobe that 26 had surprised me with when the weather turned. I added a pair of rubber shower sandals and made my way down into the pub room, moving like I was underwater, as the residual sleep and fatigue tugged at my flesh. It was a hive of brightly lit, bustling activity, filled with happy chatter and speedy, efficient motion. Memory sticks were loaded, silkscreened, and tied up with ribbon. Hats were stitched, soldered, powered, and tested. It looked like a proper assembly line. Only one problem: I didn't recognize any of the people doing the work. They all stopped and looked at me when I walked into the room. Someone's phone was playing jangly dance music, DJ mixes I'd heard online. There were 4 of them, 2 boys and 2 girls, about my age or a bit older, with strange pudding bowl haircuts and multicolored dye jobs that matched their multicolored chipped nail varnish, even the blokes. They had ragged tennis shoes that were held together with tape and safety pins, black cargo trousers with loads of little pockets, and cut-down business shirts with all the collars, sleeves, and pockets torn away. "You'd be Cecil, then," said one of the girls. She had a funny accent, not English or Scottish, foreign. Yes, I said. "Right," she said, and beamed at me, showing me the little skulls laser-etched into the enamel of her front teeth. "I'm Kuka, and these are Gertie, Thomas, and Hans the Viking." Hans didn't look anything like a Viking. He looked like a stiff breeze could knock him down. What was it about wimpy blokes and big macho nicknames? But he was smiling in a friendly way, as were the others, and waving, and I waved back, still not sure what to make of these strangers. "Are you friends of—" "We're friends of the Jammy Dodgers," Thomas said. "We're your reinforcements," Kuka said. "We've come from Berlin to help." "Berlin? We'd have been here sooner, but the hitchhiking was awful," she said. "Not least coming up from bloody Dover after we got off the ferry. It's like English drivers have never seen someone hitching a ride before." I shook my head and sat down. "I see. Who the hell are you people?" "We're 26's friends," Kuka said. "It's not so complicated. We've been on the boards forever, from way back. There's a German wing." Hans cleared his throat. "The German and Swedish wing," Kuka said. "We've been fighting the same bastards at home for years, and it seemed like a holiday was in order." I felt my mouth open and shut of its own accord. Part of me was made up that we had this help, and so exotic and energetic with their hitchhiking and that. Part of me was furious that 26 had brought in outsiders without asking me, but the enraged part couldn't work up much fury. I seemed to have burned out all my capacity to be furious, spending on a week-long binge of coffee and work. 26 appeared from the kitchen, teetering under a tray carrying our teapot, a stack of our chipped, mismatched cups, the sugar bowl, the cream jug, and a small mountain of posh little health food seed cakes that had turned up in the dumpster of a fancy delicatessen in Mayfair. "The creature lives," she said, handing me the tray and giving me a hard kiss on the neck. I handed it off to 2 of the Germans, or Swedes, or whatever, and gave her a cuddle. "This is a surprise," I said. "Surprise!" she said, and tickled my ribs. I danced back, squirming. She was grinning with pride. What was left of my anger evaporated. Thank you. So that's the reading, and we've got, say, 15-20 minutes for any questions, and then I can render some of your books non-returnable if you'd like. Samuel?
Well, actually, this is regarding to the website on which I just uploaded your book.
Right.
Can you change EPUB from for Kindle and others to like for iOS, Sony e-reader?
Sure, just email me that and I'll change that.
Okay,
sure. Other questions? Yeah.
Are you and Charlie still friends after that gruesome tour?
Are we still friends after that gruesome tour? Yeah, we had it was a bit of a death march, but yeah, no, we're still friends. We have different touring approach, I think. But together we are touring complete. We did actually have a good time, I think, and it was fun. It was fun seeing people. I don't know if any of you were at the Bot Cave when we did that event there. That was good fun. So yeah,
that was for Rapture.
That was for Rapture. Yeah, it was fun having the little heads to hand out too. They printed out lots and lots of our heads, and we got to decorate them with Kiss makeup and Insane Clown Posse makeup and Evil Twin from Another Dimension beards and stuff.
I got mine.
You got yours? Good.
Yeah, I consider it my bust of Cory.
Oh, very good. Yeah. I gave one to my wife too. She's got one at home on her desk. She can shout at it in absentia. When we both lived in LA, we had GPSs, and mine was set to the British woman's voice, and hers was set to the Canadian American man's voice, so that we could sort of ignore each other while we drove, ignore each other's kibitzing from the front seat. Other questions? Yeah.
Seems like your adult fiction tends to be a little more surrealist, and your YA fiction tends to be a little more pointed. And I was wondering if that was like on purpose, or if it just kind of happened that way.
So I don't know if that's true. I mean, some of my short fiction for young people is pretty weird. I mean, Clockwork Fagin, which is the story about kids, it's a steampunk story about kids in muddy York, which is what Toronto was called before it was Toronto, who work in the great information processing mills and are mangled by falling into the computers. And they're sent off to live in St. Agatha's orphanage, where the cruel Fagin, the orphan master, beats them and sends them out to beg with their wounds on display. And they kill him, cure his hide, stuff him with gears, turn him into an automaton, and use the automaton to fool the nuns so that they can continue to receive funding if they usher in a kind of golden age at their orphanage in which they get to run their own show. So I don't know that I would call that not surrealist. I think that's pretty. I think that's as weird as anything I've written for grown-ups. So maybe not everything I've written for grown-ups. Maybe there's a few. Yeah.
How did you first get involved in the Humble ebook bundle?
So I had a student actually when I taught at the University of Southern California called Richard Esguerra, who got a job at EFF afterwards. And he worked with EFF on their Humble Bundle connection and got on so well with those guys that he actually went to work for Humble. And so he asked me if I'd curate it, and I said yes. And then he actually halfway through that went back to EFF because they needed him more, I guess. But it was very good working with Humble. I don't know, does anyone not know about the Humble Bundle? Okay, so very quickly, Humble Indie Bundle was a video game thing where they would put together 6 video games and let you name your price, DRM-free, Mac, Windows, Linux. You could give some or all of your price to charity, and they had a couple of charities. And if you gave more than the average to date, you got 2 more games. And the first one in 2010 in the first week raised $1.25 million and closed over $1.5 million. The most recent one in 2012, it was their 7th full bundle, did $4.75 million in the first week. So they'd done a music bundle that was moderately successful. They wanted to do an ebook one. And so I helped launch that. Pirate Cinema's in it as an ebook. There's books by Neil Gaiman and John Scalzi, by Kelly Lake and Lauren Bukes, by Mercedes Lackey and Palavachi Galupe, and I'm sure I'm forgetting someone. And there are more that will come mid-promotion tomorrow when we hit the 1 week mark. And we're closing on $600,000 right now, which is pretty respectable. And the numbers involved would have made any one of those books a New York Times bestseller. So it's pretty cool. It's been successful enough that I think we're going to do more. And I've got lots of ideas for, Humble audiobook bundle and that sort of thing.
And the money goes to charity.
Oh yeah, and some of the money goes to charity. And Tor's portion of my money goes to charity because Tor obviously has the ebook rights in North America for my book. So as a North American buying the ebook, some of that money goes to Tor, but Tor's portion goes to, I believe it's the Science Fiction Writers of America Emergency Medical Fund, which bails out writers, uninsured freelance writers who are being destroyed by medical debt. Yeah?
So I know that New Orleans will restrict internet access if you're caught downloading things. Do you know of anywhere else in the U.S. that does that?
Well, all of the major ISPs in the U.S. are about to begin their 6 strikes program. So, and the major ISPs are in most places the only ISPs because, at one point when the first kind of rounds of consumer DSL came around, the FCC had a ruling that said if you owned those copper lines that DSL runs over, you had to let other companies, competitors use them on reasonable, non-discriminatory terms. And so at one point there were tons and tons of ISPs. You may remember that there were all these different ISPs across the country. The FCC was convinced by the major telcos to take that rule away. And then the next stage was there are lots of places that have very low quality connectivity or none at all, no broadband. And in those places, the cities or states had gotten involved in providing municipal or statewide broadband. And once again, in every place where there's a credible risk of that happening, the telcos lobbied the state houses to pass rules making it illegal. Even in places where there was no broadband, the cities couldn't provide broadband. So, you know, and in places where it was very substandard, they couldn't either. So the Research Triangle, North Carolina, has some of the worst broadband in the country. I think it's 49th out of 50 states. And North Carolina legislature passed a law that said they can't fix it. The city can't fix it. So you have this high-tech park that's the economic engine of the state, but the telecoms lobbyists broke it. So basically, if you get into trouble with your local major telco, you may have a major cable operator, probably only one, and they're signed up to the same rules, and all the major cable operators are now owned by or own major media companies, so they're even more likely to pass these draconian rules than AT&T, which after all is only doing it to try to avoid kind of too much regulatory scrutiny for intermediary liability, whereas the other ones, Time Warner and Comcast, actually have a dog in that fight. Yeah, Charlie?
I'm a vice president of the Internet Society's New York chapter.
Uh-huh.
As our North American Regional Bureau Director is Paul Brickner,
mm-hmm.
formerly Chief Technical Policy Advisor to the MPAA, as you know. And he's just spent months working on the CCI to get them to agree to have a town hall to talk about the 6 strikes.
Uh-huh.
And then we convinced him that it should not be in DC, which is a policy ghetto,
right,
but be in New York.
Oh, cool.
And we actually have a date, which is November 15th. We don't have a venue, but when we set the venue, I will tell Cory. Cory will
I'll put it on board. Yeah, sure.
You'll be welcome to attend.
So Brickner is a former MPA apparat, it's true, but I spent a bunch of time talking to him after that appointment and came to the conclusion that he joined the MPA because he naively and foolishly thought that he could change them from within, spent a year there, realized that it was a complete disaster and left. I mean, it wasn't his long-term, he wasn't a lifelong entertainment apparat.
You know, he still comes from that reality. Before that he was Verizon.
That's true.
But what he's been doing in the Internet Society, I mean, probably you don't know what the Internet Society is, but it's...
They run .org.
It's basically engineers and social and sort of social activists, you know, and to bring those corporations in to sort of get them at least around the table. And we actually have got the MPA, Disney, and the RIAA now as organizational members.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
what's the URL again?
ISOC, ISOC.
Well, yeah, it's internetsociety.org.
Yeah.
And we're
and all .org domains are managed by the Internet Society.
That was a thing where, you know, we were kind of going down, dying for money, and then they made, the people who had .com, .net, and .org, they said, okay, you've got to give one of them away. And so we managed to get that, so now we get
piece of the action. Yeah.
Yes. Questions about creativity and education. Are there any organizations or policies in the UK that are helping not only give more young people access to tools, but also just helping them have the space to play and kind of build?
In the UK, I mean,
or I guess in general.
So
you know, John Maida's advocating for STEAM,
right?
Arts and STEM,
right? Yeah, you know, I don't know. I mean, I speaking as the father of a kindergarten-age kid, I'm slightly freaked out by the extent to which, especially British education, is geared around getting kids ready to take their standardized test at the age of 11. And, you know, my daughter's school is entirely, its major priority is attendance. And so, you know, the kids, they're lined up at the gate at 8:45, they're marched in and stood in rows, and then each one gets a sticker that says, I arrived at school on time. It's really weird. They don't play in the playground before school. They line up so they can get their stickers saying that they got to school on time. It's bizarre the way that education's structured there. I don't know much about American education. I know in Canada it's all over the map, but there's a lot of alternative schools. And the Institute for Child Studies, where my mom works, has a lab school that's really, really good. My mom's got a PhD in early childhood ed and helped design the early childhood curriculum in Ontario, and also the way that their testing was done. They have not like a No Child Left Behind style testing, but they have a no stakes testing where it doesn't affect your kid's educational future, but it's used to figure out which teachers need more help in the classroom. She helped run that too. And it's funny because my daughter's school is like, if you keep her in Toronto for an extra week after Christmas break, she'll miss kindergarten, and she might miss something important that would go in her 11 and up test when she reaches 11. And I think that one-on-one tutelage with my mom will probably help her through kindergarten that week. She will probably do okay on finger painting that week. I think we'll be okay. It's a bit weird. Yeah.
If the Six Strike Law is something that's anathema to you, what is the most intelligent thing to do here in the States? Because dealing with the senators is sort of like dealing with the MPs.
Right.
And
yeah, so first of all, it's not a law, it's a policy. So it's a Six Strike policy. So there's no law that says they have to do this.
Okay.
This is a voluntary arrangement between the regulatory monopolies of the ISPs and the sort of unregulated monopolies of the entertainment industry. What can we do to stop it? Well, I think SOPA is pretty instructive. Like before SOPA, I think everybody who watched knew that we couldn't beat SOPA, right? I was in DC a couple of weeks before then, right around the time of the first hearings, and everybody I talked to, all the Hill Rats, all the think tankies, all of those people said, you can't win this one. Go away, go home, right? This just isn't going to work. And the people from the big IT and tech companies that I spoke to were like, we're gonna do a backroom deal. There's no way that we can get this changed. We're not even allowed in the hearings. We'll find some way to carve out some minimal exemption that'll let us go on doing business. And if you get involved in that, you might sort of screw it up. If you unwashed kids get involved, you might screw it up. And you make too much of a stink, and let the grown-ups work, right? And then 3 kids from Worcester, Massachusetts, who called themselves Fight for the Future, who met at math camp in high school. And Aaron Swartz and some of his friends at Demand Progress worked up these campaigns where people could click a button on a web page and would figure out where you were from a geolocation, a GeoIP lookup. It would figure out who your lawmaker was. It would give you a talking point sheet and connect your computer to the phone of your senator or congressman to give them an earful. And it grew and grew and grew. And people say, oh, well, Google got involved and that's what changed it. It's true that Google getting involved made a huge change. But the reason Google got involved, instead of saying, go run along, we'll sort this out in committee, behind closed doors, is because there were millions of people calling their congressman. And so Google got involved and others got involved, and we had the blackouts, we had the links on the front of Google, we had all this stuff. And it made a giant difference. And so I think individually there's not much we can do, but institutionally we can. Groups like Fight for the Future are looking for help. They're looking for mailing list members. So is Demand Progress. They need both budget and bodies. When stuff like this comes up again, they're going to run campaigns. You can bet that they'll be running campaigns on Six Strikes. EFF needs your support. Creative Commons, the Free Software Foundation, the American Civil Liberties Union, all these organizations. Pick the ones most simpatico to you, or the several that are most simpatico to you. Get on their mailing list. If you have disposable income, you can give them some disposable income to help them keep their operations afloat. But most importantly, when they have an action alert, when they need you to help and also tell everybody you know how important stuff is. Because people are primed in a way now to hear why this is important in a way that they weren't even a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, even techies were like, it's just the internet, right? I mean, civilians don't need it. They can figure it out, right? They'll just live, take away non-geeks internet and they'll just have fewer cat pictures, right? And now everybody gets this. Everybody, from the very young to the very old, from all walks of life, understands how important the internet is. And we just need to figure out how to relate that to them. So, my grandmother, nerds for some reason all hate their grandmothers and pick on them. My grandmother's a moderately intelligent and nice person, occasionally a little neurotic, as our grandmothers sometimes can be, but generally a good person. But I think she figured, by the time she reached her 80s, she had better things to do with her time than learn to use computers because she didn't really need to spend her few remaining years on Earth watching progress bars, right? But my daughter was born, and we live thousands of miles away across the ocean in London, and the only way that she gets to see her great-granddaughter, except for the 2 weeks a year that we're in Toronto, is Skype. So she figured out Skype, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. She had a reason to do it, and now telecom's policy is about her great-granddaughter. And everybody you know has a story like that. And when these issues come up, you can find ways to convey to them that story. I mean, that's what pirate cinema is supposed to do. It's supposed to kind of ground people in the wider emotional and kind of lived experience of people who have and then lose the internet. And what the internet means. I mean, today everything we do involves the internet, and tomorrow everything we do will require it. You know, we're in the middle of a huge revamp of our social services in the UK. They're going to combine all the different kinds of benefits, maternity and seniors benefits, retirement, pension, welfare and whatever, into a single benefit scheme. And that benefit scheme is going to be born digital and digital by default. So all of the services will assume that you have the internet. And then if you don't, you'll use some kind of backup system. And that backup system will never be as good, it will never be as attended, and it will, I'm sure, be more expensive to run and over time be phased out gradually and get worse and worse, right? So losing your internet in that world means that you might lose your maternity benefits, it might mean that you lose your disability benefits. You know, you go from a system that's already going to be complicated and hard to manage to one that's the second best, the kind of fallback for the complicated, hard to manage system. So this is something that I think we can tell our friends about, and that even people who don't get this, right now, when this stuff comes up, when they say, "Oh, please, if you can't be bothered to pay for your movies, you deserve to lose your internet." We can explain to them, this is not about people who don't pay for their movies. This is about the people who live in the same house as someone who is accused of having a router that is implicated in an unproven allegation of copyright infringement. That's who we're proposing to disconnect from the internet. Not people who watch movies the wrong way. People who live in houses where someone might have used the router to watch a movie the wrong way. I think people will respond to that. Yeah.
So I'm with Credo Mobile, used to be Working Assets, progressive cell phone company. Is there anyone in the ISP end of things developing that swap?
No, you got to lay wires, right? I mean, there's telecoms has naturally occurring monopolies, right? There's only you and I, if we want to start a phone company, can't get the right of way to tear up all the streets and put wires in the ground, right? That right of way is probably unpriceable, and if we did price it, it would run into the trillions. It's a subsidy that all the carriers get, and yet they treat it as though they say, "Oh, we want to be in a free market." Well, if they're in a free market, let them buy every inch of right of way from municipal governments, from you and me when they want to come into our basements. If they want to put a pole on our front lawn, let them lease a square foot of our front lawn from us, and we'll run, and they can bargain for it. And if in 2 years we decide we don't want it there, we can terminate their lease and they can go put another pole up the way that they would if they were a business and not a regulated monopoly. And yet they act as though they don't owe us any favors. They act as though their only stakeholders were their shareholders. And I just think that's wrong. It's different with the carriers who pay for spectrum, but these guys, they are the beneficiaries of enormous public largesse. Yeah.
Did a version of SOPA ever pass?
No version of SOPA passed here. Although they continue to try and push things that are SOPA-like through international treaties. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a treaty that's being negotiated in secret, like ACTA, which you may have heard of. Unlike ACTA, which had nations from all over the rich world, Trans-Pacific Partnership, as the name implies, is countries in the Pacific Rim: Canada, the US, Japan, Singapore, Australia, and so on. And these countries are, like ACTA, negotiating in secret, so we don't get to see the drafts. Not even the Congresses or parliaments get to see the drafts, like with ACTA, where the European Parliament wasn't allowed to see the drafts of ACTA. So we only know what leaks out of TPP. And so what's leaked out of TPP has been dreadful. Included in it was a licensing regime for ephemeral copies. So that is all the copies that are made on the way to the copy that you see on your screen or hear out of your speakers. So like when you click your mouse, somewhere out there in the world, like there's a server in a data center that whirs up and makes a copy into its drive buffer, into the network buffer, into several routers, into your ISP's router, into your ISP's network cache, into the router that goes to you, and the DSLAM, and then your modem's router, your modem's buffer, and then your Wi-Fi router's buffer, and then your computer's network buffer, and your frame buffer, and your hard drive cache. And the TPP draft that we saw leaked proposes licensing every one of those copies, right? Like full employment for lawyers, the end of the internet as we know it, right? So we know that ACTA at one point included mandatory border searches of iPods and hard drives, laptops, looking for infringement. So the problem with these unaccountable processes is that we don't really know what's going on. We just get these glimpses when they leak. TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, they had a meeting, an information meeting in California, and activists who were involved in this stuff tried to rent a meeting room in the same hotel so that they could have a table where people who were in the negotiation could just pick up literature that was skeptical of it, or if they wanted to come hear a session about what was wrong with their negotiation. And the US trade representative called the hotel and asked them to call the activist groups and tell them that the reservation had been canceled. And the hotel called the activist groups and canceled their reservation so that they were accidentally double booked. So the activist groups, to see whether or not that was a lie, called back saying there was something innocuous, the Rotary Club. And this guy said, yeah, absolutely, we've got all our meeting rooms are empty that weekend. So they won't even let people be near them with opposing viewpoints. So, do we have another SOPA-like thing in the offing? Absolutely. And, the Obama administration with ACTA took the position that international trade agreements don't need ratification from Congress, that the administration alone can enter into these agreements that bind on the U.S. and then order Congress to pass legislation to accord with the international trade obligations the trade representative has imposed on the U.S. or entered into on behalf of the U.S. So it's pretty bad. And I'm hoping that we get something like the ACTA protests over TPP, because it's a disaster. I know Ron Wyden is really pushing against it. He's a pretty good senator on these things.
Last question? Sure.
Just the dividing line between criminal contributory infringement and civil contributory infringement, and where is that line now, and how is it moving?
I don't know, but it's definitely moving towards the criminal side. I mean, these criminal penalties in Japan are, they didn't come out of a vacuum. It's not like the manga industry demanded them, right? The Recording Industry Association of Japan, which represents the major American and Western labels, the Motion Picture Association of Japan, which represents the 5 major movie studios, are the ones who lobbied for it in Japan. So I think the destiny of this is everyone's head in a pike. The trajectory of this is everyone's head in a pike if you're accused of downloading. Right now it's clear that you don't have contributory liability, criminal liability for most kinds of internet use, for linking and so on. But SOPA contemplated that. It was the legal theory in Grokster. Certainly I think the Supreme Court decision in Grokster muddied that line, because before that everybody was pretty clear that there was no contributory infringement if you just let people make links to other things, and they created this inducement standard.
And the kid is being extradited
from the UK. The TV Shack guy. I mean, he probably didn't commit any crimes in the US anyway. This guy ran a website called TV Shack in the UK, where he let people put links to TV programs that were on the internet, some legal, some not. Had his domain seized, and he's now being extradited to the US, even though it's really clear he didn't violate any UK laws, and it's pretty clear he didn't violate any US laws. But they can make his life a hell for a long time, where they can kind of suck him into this kind of endless round of court battles that he can't afford thousands of miles from home.
He used to get shot by the Taliban or some equivalent of it to get public.
That's right.
Opinion behind him.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm sorry to leave you on that grim note. I mean, I think that the upside is that SOPA and PIPA, unprecedented, and we'll do it again. And time is on our side. Every year that goes by, more people care about this stuff. More people feel like the internet is more than a glorified cable system.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.